Okay, so this is my story. My name is Sierra. I'm 30 years old. And over the last, maybe 2 years, I have become blind. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 2. And, you can't really explain that to a kid. And at the time, it was the 90s, so we didn't have all the fancy gadgets that they have today. And you didn't really know a whole lot about diabetes. It wasn't talked about. Not many people were diagnosed in the public eye. And, kids still played outside. And you didn't want to be different than anybody. Nobody wanted to be different at that time. And it was hard. Trying to explain that to a 2-year-old, it can't really be done. And at that time, a lot of people thought that diabetes was contagious, which is, I don't know if people still believe that today or not. It's crazy. You can't give someone diabetes. It's not how it works. But I didn't have a whole lot of friends in elementary school because I wasn't allowed to go over to people's houses because their parents were afraid that if I hung out with them, then they would become diabetic. And it stayed that way up until I was in high school. I didn't really know anybody else who was diabetic. I didn't come across any other kids who were diabetic. The only time I saw any diabetics besides myself was at diabetic camp. Yes, we have our own camps, but they're more training sessions. They would teach you to do shots, to check your blood sugar, what you can and can't eat, stuff like that. It wasn't really like summer camp. It was more like, this is your curse for the rest of your life. This is how you're going to deal with it. Becoming a teenager, I think, was even harder. And I fell into a lot of health situations that, I probably could have avoided them. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with polyperipheral neuropathy, which means that my nerves essentially are dead in parts of my body. And I can't feel them, so I can't feel anything below my knees. And I can't feel my fingers as well as normal people. They're kind of halfway dead, I guess you could say. So when I was 16, I was trying to get my driver's license, and that's when they diagnosed me with it, because I can't feel my feet. So I wasn't allowed to get a driver's license. But being a teenager by itself is hard, nonetheless being one with health problems. I fell into having an eating disorder, a diabulimic, which is, as a diabetic, you can make your blood sugar high. You can also make it low. But as a diabulimic, you eat until your blood sugar is very high and you throw up. And your body will make yourself throw up. You get very, very sick. You start hurting everywhere. The problem with doing this is that you can go into ketoacidosis, which I've been in the hospital for several times. And yeah, your diabetes kind of makes you get rid of everything, because it rejects all the food because your blood sugar is already so high. It's life-threatening. It's terrible. But it's quite easy for diabetics to accomplish. I also, at one point, would skip shots, which would also make my blood sugar high, so I wouldn't have to eat as much to get sick. And then, I also fell into cutting, self-harming, which for diabetic is easier to do than most people. My skin is very sensitive because I'm constantly poking myself to check my blood sugar anyways. I know the pressure it takes to make myself bleed. And as a diabetic, you can use things like tips of shots or lancets. And as a diabetic, they can't take it away from you. And it makes it even more easy to fall into those things and be depressed and to not want to live anymore. And I have been clean for 7 years now, which doesn't seem like a long time to some people, but I mean, it's a huge deal. It's a really huge deal. I've had a few relapses here and there. It's been, I'm going to say, about 3 years since my last relapse. I haven't been hospitalized or anything since, my last episode, about like 8 or 9 years ago. So for me, that's a huge, huge deal. But as a kid, being diabetic, you don't want to take 2-hour breaks. You don't want to stop and eat. You don't want to, come check your blood sugar, whatever. You want to be a kid. And I had a lot of lows, a lot of seizures, a lot of fainting spells, a lot of running around screaming bloody murder because I didn't recognize people. And from going from constantly being low to constantly being high caused a lot of health problems. I have very, very thin bones now. I ended up getting HPV, a form of cervical cancer, and I had to have a hysterectomy 9 years ago, which put me on set for early menopause. My bones are very thin. I have to take medication every day because my bones start to hurt and they start to lock, and I just can't get out of bed some days. On top of that, I now have retinopathy, which is the bleeding of the eyes. And every time I go in, I have to get a shot in each eye. And this has been going on for a few months. They did laser treatments to try and stop the bleeding. It worked, but didn't fix the whole problem. So they then started doing shots in my eyes. And every time I've gone in, my eyes have been swollen and still bleeding. And within the past like 6 months, I have gone almost 100% blind. I have a stick. I don't really like to call it a cane because it makes me feel even older. But I have a stick to help me find my way around. But my life has been an adventure these past few months, learning to deal with this. And as depressed as I used to be, and as depressed as I can be, I think I'm doing pretty damn good. I think I have a better outlook now than I did when I didn't have half these problems. And I would just like to share my day-to-day life with you guys. How I deal with being blind, how I deal with being diabetic, how I deal with being different. And I hope that it will inspire maybe some diabetics, maybe some blind people, maybe some depressed people, maybe someone with an eating disorder. I haven't been active in my eating disorder in, I want to say, about 5 years, which in the past 4 years, I've doubled my weight. I used to be able to fit into girls' clothes, a size 14 in girls. I now can no longer fit in girls' clothes. I would love to, because their clothes are way cuter than mine. But, yeah, I definitely have doubled my weight. And I'm okay with that. I'm healthier. I can do more things, even though a lot of days it doesn't feel like it. But I have more energy. I don't sleep nearly as much. I actually get bored now, which never used to happen because I didn't have the energy to get bored. And I find that I feel more alive than I ever used to, which is kind of contradictory considering that I can't see most things. But yeah, I'll review things on here. I'll talk about things. I can talk about all kinds of issues that most people have never even thought of, coming from the blind person. Like, have you ever seen someone walking around with one of the blind canes and they kind of just randomly stop? I have an issue with the cane, the stick, that different textures on the ground, because I can't feel the ground, that I can't tell what's there. I can't see the ground. I can't feel the ground. That I get stopped by bumps on cement, or like the little bumps that they have before entrances, or like cracks in the sidewalk, or if there's rocks sticking up in the pavement and it looks like I've just kind of like hit a wall, even though I haven't. It's because I don't know what's there. I don't know what's going to hit me. I don't know what's going to happen if I'm going to run into something. I'm going to trip over something. I'm going to, whatever, injure myself in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I have a lot of insights on things that a lot of people don't think about. And I know that a lot of people, they don't realize people's struggles. They don't realize what's going on with people. And I would like to enlighten the world. Kind of about, just because you look the same doesn't mean you are. And just because you're not doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So, if I can be okay with myself and I can live through everything that's come and hit me in the face. You can too. And I believe in you. And I will post another video later on. Thank you for listening, and I hope you got something out of it.